What does a hockey player, a nanny business, and an embedded finance company all have in common? Well, that would be Joe Keeley. He's the founder of JustiFi. And he's built an embedded finance platform that enables SaaS marketplaces, so software as a service companies, that facilitate transactions to turn those payments not into a cost center, but a profit center. By helping payment companies essentially capture that value, reduce the costs of how much it costs to do transactions, and help smartly optimize so that each transaction brings in the most revenue for that platform. It's something that you typically can't unlock as a revenue stream until you're much, much further along, providing this opportunity for budding marketplaces and SaaS companies to grow. See, Joe experienced this challenge himself when he was building a nanny business, a tutoring and nanny business, franchised it, and then built software to help facilitate that platform, and then realized how much he was losing out on the payment side of it. So he teamed up with a fellow founder, buddy, to create JustiFi and unlock this potential for other budding marketplaces. So we go deep into the embedded finance space, how all of this works, and also what Joe's learned on his journey of building companies. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode of the Silicon Alley Podcast featuring the Joe Keeley. Are you interested in growing and scaling your business? Welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast, where you'll hear from entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, and top performers on what it truly takes to grow and scale a business. You'll walk away with actionable insights you can apply in your own business and life. Now to William Glass, the CEO and co-founder of Arbitraging, and your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Joe, welcome to the Silicon Alley Podcast. Super excited to have you on today.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. And excited to dive in. You guys are doing some interesting things at JustiFi and trying to solve some problems in the payment space and help SaaS companies. So really excited to kind of dive in and learn a little bit more about your experience and why you're building what you're building.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's an ever-changing, very, very big market. So we're pretty excited about it.
Absolutely. So, would love a little context on how you decided to build JustiFi, because looking at your background, there's some skill sets that make sense, but you've also done a lot of various things. So, would love to kind of get some understanding on how you ended up where you are today, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, at first glance, I think I'm remarkably unqualified to run a embedded payment and fintech company for vertical SaaS platforms. The amount of things one might have to Google to just figure out that statement is for some, at least, and myself included, the list is long. But I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a builder. I like to facilitate extraordinary for other entrepreneurs and for teams. So I think that's, I have a co-founder that's remarkably, intelligent in this space. But my background, just to go back just a little bit, is of all things, I answered an ad when I was a entrepreneurship student in undergrad rather, at the University of St. Thomas, that said, looking for a hockey player to watch our two boys, $10 an hour. So I did whatever, what any sort of, hockey player, college hockey player would do. And I became a summer nanny or a summer man. and that experience was a great one. I had a summer job. I watched two boys that were 7 and 9 years old. And the first day I showed up, and the older one said, I introduced myself again. I'd met him, of course, before. And he said, I play hockey at St. Thomas. And he said, oh, that's really great. Very polite, all of the things. I'm going to play hockey at Harvard. And I said, oh, I've heard of that. And so I said, we better get to work then. And that experience, to really fast forward, led me to first start a staffing company and then start a franchise company inside of that, and then started Insert Technology. And we ultimately built a platform that had a booking agency as part of booking apps, and ultimately grew a company called College Nannies that became the largest employer of nannies and babysitters in the US and the UK, about 10,000 people. Sold that to a public company in 2016. And the boys did end up playing hockey at Harvard. So had an entrepreneurial experience that was, really remarkable, and got connected with some my eventual co-founders who also had a decade and a half entrepreneurial overnight success in a vertical SaaS platform, but they made 85% of their 150 million of ARR in embedded payments and embedded financial services and other products inside of their platform. So remarkable story, but that journey was very, very hard and very expensive. And we got together and said, there must be a better way that platforms can participate in this that we hear about all the time. And that is ultimately that sort of injustice that you have to be $1 billion company to experience, this sort of value creation led us to, pun intended, start JustiFi.
Love it. Yeah, thank you for the background. I definitely want to focus on JustiFi, but just to take a step back, building college nanny sitters for 2 decades. What was that experience like? What were some of the things that you really learned that have set you up for success as you move into JustiFi?
Well, I would say, if you think about it, it was really about an 18-year journey, and it's sort of poetic. And a lot of people talk about their company as their baby. And so for me, it was very much that experience. Like, I have 2 children of my own and that are getting older. And it's like, it's one of the most energetic, rewarding, exhausting, heartbreaking things all in one that one can do. So going on this journey of building a company and helping other entrepreneurs and our franchisees and giving them the technology to succeed really led me to sort of, identify like why do I exist and what do I want to do next? My sabbatical happened to align with, the deep quarantine days of the pandemic. And ultimately it's like, I want to help, facilitate extraordinary. And that for me, that means being involved in our generation's sort of most impactful thing, and that is technology. I wanted to, there was something about helping the little guy or folks, go up against some of the big things. So, and being in a big industry. So, payments, embedded fintech was very, very, interesting to me. So ultimately it's about what can I, bring to the table and what can others bring to the table to do that. And for me, JustiFi is really about helping platforms win, and do more of what they do. Platforms today, whether it's a, youth sports platform, which was my partner's business, whether it's a platform, we have folks that are in the wedding venue management business, the, small business, they do really great things. Technology enables small and medium-sized businesses to compete, to do things and delight their customers. And if we can help them make more money or add more fuel to the fire, to me, that's helping me with my own purpose, which is to facilitate extraordinary. So, that's really, really high level. But I mean, the truth is, like any business, it's about, being clear of where you are today, where you want to be, and then just simply putting, really good people in place to just take the next step. What needs to happen for that to happen? So, for me, I think reasonably good at, building good teams, pointing at that North Star and just helping remove obstacles along the way. But you probably don't want me coding anything. Let's just be clear about
that. Yeah, that wouldn't be pretty. Well, yeah, no, Joe, that makes a lot of sense. And from, I know with JustiFi, you guys have raised some capital. Now, was College Nannies considered, when you built that company, did you bootstrap or did you bring on any outside investment that was bootstrapped?
I did mostly bootstrap it. One of the catalysts is, there's many more of these competitions and awards today, but at the time I was fortunate to win in the Global Student Entrepreneur Award. Just as the name indicates, it's actual businesses run by undergrads globally. I made it through the Minnesota, the regional, the national, and the global, and won. And I remember going up to, and so it provided, there was capital that came along with that, award capital. And it did exactly what it was supposed to do, which was guilt me into not quitting and saying, now you have this sort of public persona that is, well, they got this money, they must, you can't just say, well, thanks for that, I'm going to quit. So getting through those early days with very, very little capital, some of these awards were a good thing. But I went to one of the judges afterwards and I said, I'm sorry, like I'm humbled to win, thank you, but why? There's so many folks that have more revenue than I think I do. So this isn't a revenue contest. Every single one of us judges from around the world are parents, and you are solving in your own unique way, providing role models that come into families' homes and using technology to do it. You're solving a real need. And for me, that is, a key lesson to learn. But along the way, to kind of back to your question, bootstrap, use cash flow, a little bit of private investment, but by and large, it was, grind your way through. So now, in contrast, we inserted technology in our last company in sort of year 10 through 15. Now we're building with multiple venture partners and venture debt, and we're starting with investment from day one, building technology from day one, and there are certainly some differences. And if nothing else, I will have a remarkable case study to compare and contrast. And there is no right or wrong way to grow a company, but I think intermixing the two or three oftentimes, is maybe incorrect, in that if you're designed for venture dollars, then you need to have an operating engine that matches that capital stack.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And just, curious to get that clarification, Joe, and why you made that decision. So talk to me about the problem that you're really solving at JustiFi. You mentioned that it's hard for these SaaS companies, these platforms, to capture some of this value that's with embedded payments. Can you talk about what is the problem you're solving, and a little bit more about what it is that you guys do?
Yes, of course. Delighted to. So if we take a step back, and I think that SaaS companies, vertical SaaS, they're providing a service. Maybe they're providing software for youth sports or barbershops or whatever it happens to be. They have plenty to do. They have a roadmap, and they have, to acquire customers and keep customers and all these sort of things. And they've heard, or maybe even they've been told, well, you have to make money in payments, or you need to become a payment facilitator, or you need to sell insurance. And it's really overwhelming. And we all love to look at Toast or Airbnb, and they're sort of giant fintech Trojan horses hiding in plain sight. In other words, they're making money on the money flow and the opportunities in their business. But even a sub $1 billion platform, the system is not designed for them. Meaning it's a pay to play environment. Who has the time to build all these integrations? Who has, it's the catch-22. It's like, well, I'll get good terms once I get really big, but how do I get really big if I don't get good terms? It's the constant, first person in on an internship. Well, you don't have any experience. We can't hire you. Well, give me a shot and I'll have experience. So effectively, we're looking at and say every vertical SaaS platform can become a fintech platform. In other words, can untether the potential that they have and accelerate it by enabling to make money on payments that flow through their system, can offer lending, can offer embedded insurance, offer these things, but without having to build all the over infrastructure. I think embedded payments and embedded financial services, is a little bit like, hosting data and of the past. Like, well, it would be crazy to have a closet full of servers today, right? And the next step in that would be using AWS and Google. The next step after that is to use all of them. And that's effectively what we do, is we look at the potential inside of a platform and we say, let's agree what that potential is. And it typically like 3 to 5 times greater than without this strategy. Without activating payments and embedded fintech, the company is worth 3 to 5 times less. Let's accelerate that. And that's why we exist at JustiFi, is to accelerate the fintech potential inside of a platform.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, Joe. And I guess just to further clarify, can you walk through, whether it's with, if you're allowed to use customer names, great, but an example of how you're solving this for customers today? Walk through one example of here's the barbershop software or whatever it is, and like this is what they're offering. Because like you hear embedded finance, you hear embedded fintech, payments, all that stuff, but like if that's not what I do every day, like it can be a little confusing and overwhelming, to your point. Like all of the things that you had to Google right before before being able to really wrap your head around everything that's in this space. Like, so can you kind of like walk through an example to highlight what it is that you do and the value behind it?
100%. So if I'm a vertical SaaS platform, and let's say I provide software for, again, any particular industry, but our origin story was one where we're providing software for youth sports leagues. Okay, great. So you do that, you charge a SaaS fee, but no matter how great the product became, it turns out that those leagues or those customers would pay about $65 to $100 a month in SaaS. And that's great. And we all know that that can be very valuable, but it takes an awful long time to build a $1 billion company that way. So, but it turns out that every SaaS customer's inside of the platform who uses that vertical platform to manage their business, whatever it happens to be, they have customers. So oftentimes the platform, turns on Stripe, and that's really easy. And they allow their customers on their platform to collect payments for their services. So a parent signs up for T-ball for their kiddos. They pay their $500 registration fee. The platform enables that to happen. Everyone gets paid. It's great. But there is value to be unlocked there. And even monetizing payments, a lot of platforms like, okay, well, we should get a cut of that, or we should get, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. But the bigger picture is to monetize payments, meaning having payments flow through the platform and achieving, let's say, 100 basis points of keep in that exercise. And then how do you go beyond payments? So that is embedded lending. Each small business in a platform, many of them have cash flow challenges. So how do you bring lending into their platform? And you're really doing a service for your customers, because if someone has a $10,000, cash flow issue, being able to click on the platform and have it be transferred immediately is way more attractive than trying to go through the labyrinth that is the banking process, or to put it on a credit card. Both are too slow or too expensive. So offering value add payment and embedded fintech to the customers, always having a focus on the customer, and then adding additional products. And if you do all of that times your funds flow and you do it well, at our experience, 85% of the $150 million of ARR came from this strategy. So essentially, the real economic business that existed there is providing embedded payments and embedded financial services. Even though the software itself had all kinds of amazing, tools and features to help the small or medium-sized business do what they do, whether that's the barbershop, the sports org, whatever it happens to be, the restaurant. But it's unlocking that. So what we do is provide all the APIs, all the hosted solution, including actual humans, team members, to aid in the strategy and support, because this is complicated and it isn't the business, and hiring chief payment officers are really expensive if you could even find one. So we think there's simply a better way. We think that, unlocking this, that platforms create are the center place of that valuable ecosystem. So therefore, they should participate in and I would take it a step further, achieve the lion's share of the value that in the ecosystem they've created, which means we think that processors should take a little bit less. And we think that, if they're introducing and lendings happen, they should participate in that. So that is what we believe and what we enable to do with our technology, our platform, and equally important, our team.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, thanks, Joe, for walking through that. So that was going to be my next question, which you kind of answered there, which was like, how do you unlock this, right? Like, so it's saying that you've already negotiated deals with payment processors, right? So that there's a percentage that can go back to the SaaS platform. You've got obviously the opportunity to introduce new products like lending. You said insurance, depending on obviously what the SaaS's customer subsegments are. So it's really, you've pre-negotiated these opportunities so people can just plug them in. Is that the right? So like, because you can just go use Stripe or you could use something else. But the point is that you want to flow through the platform, and you've got to better deal with the payment processors by going through JustiFi, so you capture some of that value by processing the payment. So it doesn't.
And you
Is
do
that accurate?
capture
Yeah.
it is accurate. And
Okay.
if inside of a Stripe is a closed ecosystem.
Yeah.
And it's tied to the greater the integration you do, then maybe you could achieve better monetization. And we believe a couple of things. We believe that the cost of a payment should be based on what the actual cost of the payment is, not how big you are. And we also believe that a platform should retain ultimate flexibility. Meaning, if you choose a horse, if you choose a payment processor, or you choose a lending partner, like that's it. And if you go outside of that, you have to rebuild the sub-account architecture. So ultimately, the key to all of this is a managed orchestration layer. So yes, we negotiate all these rates and lower, but we also are able to route and drive down the cost through AI optimization of all of these, because there's a huge difference in monetizing payments and monetizing payments well, monetizing lending and monetizing it well. We believe that every platform ought to have the opportunity to become world-class from the beginning, not just, once we get bigger, then we can negotiate, then we can build all this extra tech. We think, no, you can do that now. You can ultimately, that's why we exist.
Gotcha. So how would you define Joe, your like target customer? Can anyone, it sounds like you work with small, medium-sized companies that are small platforms. Like, it's not like you've got to have a certain amount of, revenue. Like, what does that look like? What does your core customer look like?
So it's a vertical platform that is building software and for a specific customer need that's out there. And there's so many of them. We work with folks that are in the logistics space, venue managed space, youth sports. It goes on and on and on. But they are focused on building the best product to help small, medium-sized businesses typically, solve real problems with software. And that regardless of where they're at on their payments and fintech journey, it could be they've yet to monetize payments. Okay, well, let's start there.
Yeah.
Or it could be like a couple of our customers where they are already, quite along on the journey. They're monetizing billions of dollars of funds flow, but they want to know what's next. They want to really unlock this potential. So we really have a blessing in that we are working with, entrepreneurs and teams that are well on their way, and they just really want to become world class. And we have others that thought it wasn't possible until they got bigger. And the surprise and delight that we get to see is like, no, we think that, $1 billion processing volume pricing should come to you at startup. So it's, for me, going back to, helping, we grew in franchising. So we were essentially a little entrepreneurship incubator. It goes back to my roots in that I really like to help to facilitate extraordinary and help entrepreneurs and do more of what they do best. So, that gets me personally really excited when we get to talk to a platform and we get to put more fuel on the fire so they can build more features, they can hire more engineers, they can maybe delay that capital round, and we can ultimately help their company become more valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, Joe. And yeah, being able to enable entrepreneurship obviously is an exciting thing to be able to do. You mentioned something that I want to, maybe it's a little technical, but you mentioned that the cost of payments are different, right? So behind the actual platform, like, you'll smartly route to, like, here's where this one is. What do you mean by that, right? Like, is it I'm using credit versus an ACH? Is it the type of card? Is it the amount? Like, what do you mean by the cost of the transaction? Like, how does that vary? Because this is something that, I don't think is obvious from the outside looking in.
It's not obvious, and we've sort of been lulled to sleep that the cost of a payment is 3%, just the cost of doing business. And maybe if you're Costco or Starbucks or someone, you can negotiate it to be less. But it is sort of a hand-to-hand combat negotiation. We're saying that's not right. We think that in many cases should be a lot less. Interchange tables have been, when people say the cost of payment, usually they're talking about the cost of the processor. But there are a half a dozen to 8 different parties involved in what actually constitutes the cost of a payment. And the left hand isn't talking to the right hand. So we want to look at a payment and be a true partner, a committed partner that says we want it to be fair, we want it to be just, hence our name, and we want to challenge. We think anyone who's adding value in the stream should get paid a fair portion of that, but not more. So there's no one advocating for the platform. There's no one saying, hey, there might be a cheaper way, a less expensive way to route this payment, because interchange table is a lot like the tax code. And someone can pay a smaller total effective rate of taxes by simply following the rules in the tax code, but sometimes it takes a PhD to figure it out. So we have those folks, and we're building software to make sure that we're keeping a little bit leveling the playing field. So there are literally dozens upon dozens upon dozens of optimizations that can be brought to light to lower that cost of the payment. But traditional processors aren't motivated to do it because they just take their basis points on top of it. So again, we experience this in growing multiple platforms. We've struggled through this, and that is really what inspired us to do something different and better for platforms.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And thanks, Joe, for getting a little technical there and peeling the onion back, because I think it's just helpful to get a little more context. And as you said, people have gotten used to just, okay, it's 3.5% for a payment. That is what it is, without really understanding all of the little nuances in between.
And it's easy for this to be on the roadmap, and it's always 6 months out because it's intimidating, and no one we think is really bringing a partnership approach. I mean, even some of the best names in the industry, they have great APIs. It's like, yeah, but there might be 12 different ways to implement it, and they just want to talk to someone. But you can't talk to anyone unless you're $500 million of volume. And again, we don't think that's fair. We think that everyone should enjoy the benefits of the technology that exists today in this space. Just like going back to our hosting, using the cloud for hosting, no one asks what size company you are, and you don't have access to this walled garden. So then we don't think that should be the case in payments and embedded fintech either. So, we're champions for the startup. We're champions for the, $200 million platform that really aspires to be the next, world-class platform out there. And they need this fuel to hire the, good software isn't cheap. And, it's not easy to do. And we think that payments, let alone other beyond payments, fintech, those are like 2 or 3 other businesses. So it doesn't make any sense. We think that this should all be built in-house. That's a dated model, but we do think that someone shouldn't have to settle. They should achieve, world-class monetization, and shouldn't have to build, 2 years worth of engineering to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense, Joe. What is when you think about the next step, right? The next phase of JustiFi, what does that look like? What are you guys shooting for? What is the next kind of big milestones that you're really excited about?
So we're really excited about being that sort of fintech Sherpa on the way up the mountain for our clients. So it often starts with payments, and that is what most folks are in this space, very familiar with. But it's about getting them the right architecture, optimizing that. It's like, wow, okay, great. But then going beyond that. So it is bringing these other products to bear, and then optimizing that, because things are rapidly changing. So, for us, it is really about sharing in the journey and doing it in quarters, not years, with our platform partners. And, there's something just remarkably fulfilling. And I saw that when I was, growing our college nannies business and franchise. When you're able to help someone else be successful at what they do, that's really what it's all about. So if we can help a platform, become, the player in their industry, if they can help more small to medium sized businesses in their vertical, and they can take on less risk to do it, it's just incredibly rewarding. So we're really, really excited about who we're working with today. And we typically don't, we're not a business that needs to work with thousands and thousands and thousands of platforms. That's not it at all. We like to work with a few that really have big aspirations, that are just sort of naturally curious, and also see that having a partner is preferred.
Absolutely. No, I love that, Joe. And it makes a lot of sense. Touched on it again, but I'd love to come back and revisit your why, like the why behind what you do, right? Can you highlight that and maybe dive a little bit deeper as to why it is that that you landed on that as your drive at this point, right? Because you've already built a successful company. So, like, what is it that motivates you to get up every day and keep doing what you're doing? Because building a startup is not easy, and especially when you've got customers relying on you, and you've also decided to go the venture route, which is a completely different monster than bootstrapping.
Yeah. So, it's interesting and not uncommon that my personal why and JustiFi's company why are completely aligned. And that is the case. The founders of a business, I believe, ought to have alignment. There shouldn't be misalignment there. So for me, to facilitate extraordinary, and for JustiFi to accelerate potential, are sort of the same side of the coin, actually. So the reason why I did it is because, we talk a lot about, life work balance. And when most folks say, "Well, I need more life work balance," they say they need more life in the life work balance equation. It really talks about working less. And for me, when I was on sabbatical and determining, what do I do next? What does work look like for me? Does it even exist? I had those luxuries, and I was out of balance. I was out of life work balance. But the flip side of it, I actually had not enough work in my life work balance. And it's not that I don't love my family, and they hopefully enjoyed all the meals I cooked, and that sort of thing. But meaningful work is essential to the human condition, I believe. And it's not always have to be a traditional, like, I show up to this office for this W-2 for pay. But, you talk about, like, what really drives. And, a friend of mine, Dan Buettner, is a National Geographic explorer. He's the author of the Blue Zones. So the Blue Zones is an interesting book. He analyzed, where are the places in the world that have the greatest number of centurions, or people that live to 100 and beyond, and why. So there are a couple of different reasons, and I recommend the book. But one of those reasons is a sense of purpose that was consistent across the globe of these hotspots of centurions. So for me, understanding, my purpose and finding ways for that to work on that and for that to flourish was, essential for happiness for me, frankly. So, not, and I'm hopefully this go round, I can do things not just hard, a little bit smarter and not just harder, because, I do want to still coach my kids, hockey practice, and I'm going to be there. Whereas, it was a little dicey in the early days without, and that's one of the things that, institutional investors can bring. Yes, the expectation is very high, and it should be. You're dealing with OPM. It's other people's money. But at the same time, it's like, you can do both of it. But that balance, right? We talk about that life work balance. It shouldn't be measured in a day. It shouldn't be measured in a week. It needs the timeline needs to be longer, I believe. So there are times where I'm going to be here till midnight hammering out that proposal, for sure. And I'm also going to make hockey practice. So it's about finding that balance. But for me, I needed to get in and use my, I think, God-given gifts and talents, and help it, help do this. And I think that at the end of the day, that is what I don't know if I'm going to make it to 100, but I'm going to give it a good run for Dan.
Yeah, might as well. Yeah, right. You get the purpose right, and then if you can figure out what those other few things were too, add those in, and you've got a pretty good chance at it.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Lots of salads.
Yeah, Joe, how do you define extraordinary? Right, if that's part of your why, like, what is extraordinary?
I think it's one step past what one thinks is possible. So when I think about a platform, the thing that sort of delights is when we push just a little bit and say, well, what about this next step? Why can't you achieve 250 basis points of keep just because the world is telling you that, you this is the box that you have to live in? Like, just challenging it a little bit, right? I'm talking to my daughter, who's a junior in high school, and she's planning for colleges, and she's, I got to have a safety school. And I said, don't even think like that. You don't need a safety school. There's no such thing in your world, right? It's about finding the right fit. So I think it's just, and it's funny, it's easy to give and it's hard to follow. So it's about also doing it to oneself. But accelerating potential, facilitating extraordinary means you have to define it. What is extraordinary? What is your potential? So it's a constant thing one needs to do. But I think by defining it, at least, if you ask the question, and if you ask the question over and over again, it starts getting ingrained. Because I think like strategy, whether that's for business or for one's personal life and goals, it's about really only three things. First is answering the question, where are we today? And being truthful about where are we today? Just you and a sheet of paper. Where are we today? No one's going to see it. No investors are looking at it, but like truth serum, where are we today? Then, and the bottom of that sheet of paper, saying, what's possible? Where do we want to be? And you get to go crazy on that and what's possible. And it could be personally, it could be, you're envisioning that sort of White House on the hill in Greece or whatever it is that your goals are, family. And then asking the third question. But the key is to ask the third question over and over and over again. And that third question is, what needs to happen for that to happen? And then what needs to happen for that to happen? Because the key here is, a lot of times people are really good on the vision part, right? But vision, it's been said, vision is just hallucination if you don't have, the traction or the plan to execute on it. So, for me, it's just doing that periodically from time to time personally. Doing that with our teams, doing that with engineering, doing that with our customers and their platforms. And if we can get those three questions right, we're going to end up in a really good spot and hopefully scratch the surface on looking back and saying, yeah, we got close to that vision. We got close to, or we fulfilled that purpose more days than not, right? We're not looking for perfection. We're not in that business, personally or professionally, but we are looking for excellence.
Yeah. I love that, Joe. I think that's, super, super important, super powerful, something that I think you're spot on. It's easy. The vision actually is easier than you think. And then it's all the stuff, that step, the next step of actually turning that vision into reality is what's difficult. So, Joe, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you sitting down. I want to leave you with a final word. So if there's anything else that you'd like to share with the audience, and then please, how can folks connect with you outside of this podcast? And feel free to share any asks that you have of the audience as well.
Yeah, great. So, thank you so much. It's been great to sit down. I think that, I would say on my journey, for entrepreneurs that are out there, it's what I found is that it's easy when I tell my story to say, wow, I had this summer job as a nanny, and then, blah, blah, blah. And then we had 200 locations and, tech enabled, bookings, and sold that to a public company, and skipping over the blood, sweat, and tears in between there. And that is not the case. It is, just looking for that next right answer. So, I was wrong more than I was right. So, but, not giving up was definitely something that we did. So, keep going is what I would share. And I think for platforms in the space we're in today is, I would just say, don't accept the status quo that's out there. And just like in every other space, whether that's, the developer tools we use, the hosting, the cloud, everything else has progressed, then there must be different and better ways of doing this than we've been stuck in for the last couple of decades. So I would encourage them to challenge that status quo and to be curious. We love talking to platforms. We love identifying their potential, whether it turns out to be a commercial relationship or not. It's why we get up every day. So I invite those conversations, either connecting directly with me on LinkedIn, or JustiFi.ai is our website, with FI is our logo and our brand. So thanks again, and delightful to be with you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. So how can people connect with you outside of this podcast? Where should we send folks if they want to chat?
Great. Just go to our website. It's JustiFi.ai. Easiest and best way to get a hold of us.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joe. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you sharing your story and everything that you guys are building.
My pleasure. Good luck.
On your way out, please share the podcast with others. It's the only way that the community grows and others hear these incredible stories from entrepreneurs and top performers. And of course, pound that subscribe button so you get notified when episodes drop every Friday. I'm William Glass, CEO and co-founder of Ostrich, and of course, your host of the Silicon Alley Podcast. Have a very profitable day.
You got no time to waste, but still you hesitate. Caught in a circle saying, I'll never leave this place. Some words got you searching for the bright side of